What is your background with Roger? Since in the press notes you said you've known them since you were both teenagers. And what
Yes.
and what were you creating together that you believe ultimately led to Lavender Men?
Oh gosh, it's definitely been quite the long road. So Roger and I met my freshman year of college, their sophomore year of college, and so we're definitely involved in multiple productions back then, including one that starred Pete Plazik, who plays Abe in Lavender
Wow.
Men. So
Wow.
we all go back quite a long ways. And then Pete and I both moved to LA, where Roger's originally from. Roger was born and raised in Los Angeles. Roger was then in Chicago for grad school at Northwestern. And when Roger moved back to LA, we started working together on some short films and some theater projects. And then Lavender Men kind of organically grew from that, first as a play, when Roger shared the first draft with me, and then just through a variety of sort of unexpected roadblocks between COVID and
Yeah.
other opportunities, we found ourselves creating a feature film of it.
When did it occur to them to create the history through the history of the nation? And where did they find the parallels in the Fantasia regarding the rumors of Abraham Lincoln?
Well, I think this is true of both of us. I think Roger and have kind of always both been big fans of history. I think Roger especially, like even when I first knew them, because their senior thesis at college was kind of a re-examination of Shakespeare's life through the lens of an African woman in Elizabethan England.
Ha!
Um, and so Roger's always been fascinated about kind of overturning historical perspectives that were clearly there, but the light is never shown on. And with Lavender Men, especially, like I know the idea first came to them while they were at Northwestern, and they went down to Springfield and they started kind of
Wow.
going through the library there and sort of because Roger does have a fascination with the Civil War from a broader standpoint, but I think that trip to Springfield really allowed them to zero in on Lincoln. Um, and then for me, when Roger first showed me the draft, like I'm just such a fan of like Tony Kushner, Tom Stoppard, like people who take really, really thorny historical moments to sort of shine a light on a contemporary issue. And like when Roger brought Lavender Men to me, I was like, oh no, you definitely have something here. Like we need to go down this road.
Keeping the theatrical element of the play is the centerpiece of the film, but how did you make it more cinematic? What tricks of the camera and scope of filmmaking versus the stage did you want to intuitively create?
Oh, 100%. Well, I mean, I think also so much of the film is also about watching and who is being watched and when and how. And I think it was really about sort of like scratching the surface of this theater and figuring out, okay, what are the kind of unexplored vantage points that we might not normally be
Right.
finding, and like really kind of opening up the whole space to be in the dressing rooms, be in the lobby, like even the alleyway scene, the alleyway, which takes place in the hallway by the bathrooms there, and just kind of letting Taffeta as a character take the lead of like, where would Taffeta set this scene in their Fantasia, in this kind of purgatorial space that they just can't shake, this theater that they just emotionally can't find their way out of. Um,
Amazing.
and so that really informed a lot of it. But even just like leaning into the pleasant surprises of like, because Skylight Theater, where we shot, part of the reason it's called Skylight is the building does have three actual skylights that they pull doors over for productions because obviously you can't let the
Right.
natural light in.
Right.
But I was just saying, I was like, I've never seen it with the actual skylights open. So they lowered the doors and just like all the sunlight flooded in. So I turned to our DP when we were there scouting for this, and I was just like, whenever we come out of like the nightmare train sequence and we get to Washington, D.C., we have to do it in the natural light because it just feels like a totally different room. And so, sure enough, we were like, okay, we got to time it, make sure the light's coming in from this way, that way, get the hazer going, get the beams. Um, but yeah, just really leaning into how does the theater itself want to show us all of its different sides and sort of like for lack of a better metaphor, how do we use the whole cow?
Wow, very good. So the character of Mary Todd Lincoln is suddenly getting a place in the sun.
She really is. I feel like Sally Field was ahead of the curve.
She really was. um, and you use her effectively in your work. Why do you think Mary still invites storytelling speculation? And what do you personally admire about her?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think Mary, I mean, she's got such a deep bench of history. Like, I mean, I think she's probably the rare first lady whose backstory rivals her husband's in terms of how
Yeah,
history has viewed her.
good
I mean,
point.
I'm sure all things being equal, many of these spouses had just as powerful lives. It's just history hasn't seen fit to latch on to them in the same way. But I think,
Jackie O and Mary Todd.
yeah, no, and I would say certainly in the last 25 years, first ladies are more getting their due. But I think
Sure,
prior to the mid 20th century,
right.
I mean, what Martha Washington, Dolly Madison, and Mary Todd Lincoln, do we remember any of the others? Um,
Right.
and she Roger especially is very fascinated with Mary because I mean she I didn't know this until Roger told me she ended her life virtually penniless. Like she was living
Yes.
in like a one room apartment in
Uh,
DC. Like she never quite recovered.
no, she
And I
never did.
think, but she was in so many ways a force behind Abe, and like in terms of the way she was galvanizing so much of the politics, she was really fighting and pushing. And I think Roger especially with the themes that they were zeroing in on of loneliness and isolation and reaching out to someone who's kind of shoving you away. I think he really felt that Mary and Taffeta aligned in an interesting way that even just within the world of the story kind of does become a little bit of the third rail. Like Mary is the part of the Lincoln Fantasia that when Taffeta gets there continually, it feels too close to the sun because it feels too similar. Because I think it was very deliberate that when the Fantasia kind of starts fritzing back into the real world for the first time, it's when Taffeta is Mary.
Interesting. Well, Abe was the old rail splitter.
Yes, or as Roger would say, America's daddy.
Interestingly enough, obviously Todd Lincoln suffered from PTSD from the assassination.
Mm.
So did Jackie O. They both suffered for that.
Well, I mean, how could you not?
Yeah, exactly. Um, the title "Lavender Men" can refer to the so-called Lavender Scare of the Joseph McCarthy era, and again, we are in the midst of a scare involving TGNC people and censorship of LGBTQIA plus communication in society. After a brief golden age after the same-sex marriage was codified. Now, how do you think we can reverse this trend of hate in the era? I don't even like saying his name, Donald Trump.
No, I know. It's funny. I mean, Roger and I have said many times that the movie seems to just become more timely and resonant with each more timely and resonant than it was intended to be. I mean, especially Roger's line of "God save me from great men." There's enough of them running around right now ruining everything.
Right.
But I really do think when I look back on my own lived experience, like growing up in the South, and especially like having Republican family members, things like that, or just even I think the bulk of all prejudices come from the unfamiliar. And I think the minute that there is a person that can be attached in someone's life to a cause, it automatically changes their entire perspective on it.
Right.
Um, and like I feel like there's an example that I do want to invoke from when we were on our festival tour. And I won't give too many salient details just to protect the woman's privacy. But we were screening at a festival in the South, and a woman who had come to the festival who was a little bit older, and like she then went on to give me some biographical details of herself. Just really said like, well, I came in here thinking I was going to get I knew I was getting a Gay-braham Lincoln movie, but I was unprepared for Taffeta and the transgender non-binary experience.
Right.
And
Right. as
She
was
said,
I.
yeah, and she said it really changed it for me. It really altered a lot of what I was expecting
Right.
someone like that to be. And when I went and looked the woman up later, she was on the Republican steering committee for that state's
Wow.
Republican Party.
Wow.
And so I had a moment where I was like, okay, well, no matter what, I feel like we did something right today. Like that someone came in who had a very specific worldview that then even just the act of reconsidering, because I think Roger and I have been talking recently just about like the power of empathy, and that I think especially in darker times, certain people in power will try to say like, no, empathy is weakness, no, empathy is not helpful. No, it's like
Right.
the strength of a nation actually comes, I think, from its empathy and
Right.
from communities aligning. It's like people only want if people are putting away empathy, it's because they want you divided. And I really think it comes from just putting faces on these things. And I know that if someone comes to this movie and then thinks not even of Roger per se, but thinks of the character of Taffeta as something that's associated, and if that's a positive association or just alter something, then I do think we've done our job.
Brilliant. How does your journey as a filmmaker, director, and storyteller parallel Taffeta? Where in their soul do you find parts of your own soul?
Oh, wow. Huh. It's funny because now I'm reflecting on the parts that I steered Roger more toward. Like, no, no, I think we should go in this direction. Like, oh God, how much of that was me and just my own baggage. I mean, I think I very much identify with the loneliness that Taffeta goes through and how to break oneself out of that. I think also the ways in which we can rely on humor or as a crutch, things like that. I
Right.
also, if I'm being like rigorously honest, it's like, yeah, Taffeta, get romance out of the workplace. There's like it won't help you. Like it won't like say things like there've definitely been moments like especially in my 20s where like, oh, really? Should I really be dating this person that I know from this project? Like no, this will inevitably end badly. Let's steer clear. So I think one of the things that I admire about Taffeta and that I think I aspire to about Taffeta is at the end of the day, Taffeta does find the ways to stand up for themselves and to do so in a way that honors themselves and like frees themselves from problematic situations. And I think if that's a lesson I could take from Taffeta in the future, that I think as we all inevitably find ourselves in tricky situations in life, I think sometimes metaphorically you just need to set it all on fire and take yourself out of that situation. And
Yes.
so yeah, I think maybe that's the gift I will take from Taffeta moving forward in my life.
This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com. Copyright 2025.